Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar to talk about the SRF Helene and other funding opportunities for Helene impacted communities. Just want to make sure I do a quick sound check. If somebody could just put in the chat or send a message that you can hear me okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. We are recording this webinar and we also will be posting the slides online and the recording of the webinar. Hopefully the recording goes well. So this will be posted. Please feel free to share with other people as well. I've also already uploaded the PowerPoint slides as a PDF into the WebEx platform right now. So I think if you look under the options, there should be an option that says content, and you might be able to download the presentation, a copy of the presentation now. But again, it'll be posted online as well. I really appreciate everybody's time. I know we didn't give a lot of notice on this one, but there's no new information. We've presented about these applications and these funding opportunities in the past, in May when we went out to Western North Carolina, and then when we had application forms available at the end of July and beginning of August, we did application trainings. This information is pretty much the same information, but it's another opportunity to reshare and to have an opportunity to answer any questions that you might have about Helene funding for drinking water and wastewater projects. I'm joined on this webinar with several folks from the Division of Water Infrastructure. I'll be calling on them to help answer some of the questions. While I'm presenting screen, it's hard for me to monitor the chat at the same time. So I appreciate our staff's time our staff jumping in and letting me know when there's an issue. But if anybody has a question that you'd like to verbally voice, please use the raise hand function. I'll call on you to unmute, ask your question, and we can respond. Or you can just put your question in the chat, and either staff will respond in the chat or we can read through the question and answer the question online. We'll try to do that along the way as well. There'll be time, hopefully, at the end to answer general questions or just overall questions. But if you want to ask questions as we go along, that's fine. If you ask a question that we're going to be touching on in a few more slides, we'll get to it in the slides and then answer any follow-up questions at that point. Okay. Let's dive right in. So we're here to talk about drinking water and wastewater infrastructure funding available for Helene impacted communities. There are two in particular that we'll be focusing on in this webinar. There's an SRF Helene funding. That's the state revolving funds that are dedicated to Hurricane Helene impacts and to help with resiliency for infrastructure. That's the new $685 million worth of funds that we're getting from EPA. And we are in the process of awarding right now. So I'll talk about that first. We'll also talk about grant funds. We only have 30 million for that. We have some grant funds available to also address Helene impacts and repairs. So I'll talk about those two, and then we'll have just general information about applications, and then we'll open up for questions. Okay. I'm going to start with the takeaways. That way if you don't have time for the whole hour, that's fine. You can just get the takeaways and then come back to us later if you have some more questions. But we have takeaways on the SRF Helene applications. First thing to know is that the applications for SRF Helene funds are available right now. We're encouraging everybody to apply. They are on our website. We take these applications on a rolling basis, meaning that there is no actual deadline to submit these applications. We'll take them as they come in. But we'll use specific cutoff dates to group all the applications we received up to that cutoff date to review them at the same time and then present them to the State Water Infrastructure Authority, SWIA, on specific dates. So you see here on the screen that we've got 3 more SWIA meetings. We'll be making SRF Helene awards. SWIA yesterday made their first round of SRF Helene awards. So they awarded $86 million yesterday out of this funding. And we have 3 more meetings with SWIA. And you'll see a slide that shows the cutoff dates for those applications that would lead to the December 10th, February 18th, and April 15th and 16th SWIA meetings. We anticipate fully awarding all $685 million by the April meeting. So for that, you need to know that the final cutoff date for the SRF Helene applications is March 2nd, 2026. That's really the last time that you can apply for the SRF Helene funds, because applications we receive by March 2nd will be reviewed and awarded in April. And then at that point in April, after we've awarded these 4 rounds of funding, any remaining funds that will be available out of the SRF Helene funds will be awarded to applications that we've already received between August all the way through March 2nd, to add additional funds that are needed because we're partially funding projects at this time. So April is the last time that we'll be awarding funds. March 2nd is the last time that you can apply for these funds. I mentioned that we're doing partial awards. We know that the funding demand is high. We know that not everybody's ready for an application just yet. So we're trying to provide some time for folks to be able to apply, but we also want to award the funds as quickly as possible. So we're taking the applications on a rolling basis, but until the April SWIA meeting, we are limiting or we're capping the application awards for applicants up to $10 million for drinking water projects and up to $5 million for wastewater projects. So each applicant, each local government, each eligible utility can get up to 10 million for drinking water, up to 5 million for wastewater. We don't have specifically a cap, a dollar amount for a cap for the decentralized funds, but we can talk about that later. But if they were partially awarded, partially funded, like yesterday, so we awarded funds and some of those applications requested more funding than the initial caps. So we awarded what was the cap. So some folks got 10 million, but they needed more. What's going to happen is in April, after we've done 4 rounds of these kinds of funding awards, anything that's remaining in the SRF Helene funds that we have will go back to those partially funded projects and provide additional funds based on availability. Big, our main message is apply as early as you possibly can. And that way you can get your applications in, we can review you in the next SWIA meeting. And you always have the opportunity, if you don't get awarded in the next SWIA meeting, to see how you did on your application, see if you were missing information, see if you're missing documentation, so they can resubmit your application before that March 2nd cutoff date. So our advice is apply now if you can, apply as early as possible. And applications that will be received by November 3rd will be considered in the SWIA meeting on December 10th for funding awards. Okay, on the other funding opportunities, so not the SRF Helene funds, but there are other funds available for Helene impacted communities, which include the SRP grants. We normally do, the Division of Water Infrastructure normally has applications for funding twice per year, fall round of applications and a spring round of applications. We're right now in the middle of the fall rounds, fall 2025 application rounds. Usually that includes funding for CDBG, SRF, other types of funding programs. There's a portion of that money that's going to be dedicated specifically to, or prioritized, sorry, specifically to addressing Helene damages in 16 specific counties, because a session law requires SWIA to prioritize state grants to those 16 counties to address Hurricane Helene damages for any unmet needs above insurance or federal aids. For that, you're just going to be applying through the fall 2025 application forms. So it's a different form, different application than the SRF Helene. And that is it's one of the other takeaways that you will see in a second. To qualify for this state grants prioritization from the session law, there's an additional form you need to fill out and include in your application for the fall 2025 funding rounds. And the form is called the State Reserve Program Eligibility Form for Hurricane Helene Prioritization per Session Law 2025-26. You'll find it on our website. I'll show you some slides later on. The fall 2025 application is due 5 p.m. on September 30th. So there's not a lot of time left. There's only a couple of weeks. But that's the deadline for the fall round of applications. SWIA will review the applications and make those awards in February 18th, 2026. The SRP grants, those state grants as part of this fall 2025 funding rounds, are limited to $3 million per eligible applicant every 3 years. That's a statutory limit. So we can do SRP grants. SRP grants are limited to them to $3 million. And so this is not going to be a grant program where you can expect a $15 or even $10 million grant to help with Hurricane Helene damages. Statutorily, the limit is $3 million. However, if you're applying in the fall 2025 rounds, you're submitting that one application and you get automatically considered for all of our funding programs, not just the SRP grants. So there is a potential that the funding depends on how your application scores. Your application may be eligible for 3 million SRP grants, and you may also get additional funding from like an SRF loan or something else that you may qualify for. So we may be able to fund more than 3 million, but it won't be more than that in terms of grants. Our advice, because we have two different funding opportunities, is to apply to both. I don't think it's a good idea to just try to pick one or the other. I think it will make sense for you as a potential applicant to apply to both programs if you qualify for both. Submit the fall 2025 round application and submit your SRF Helene applications. And make sure you apply separately because these are separate application forms. So these are the takeaways. I'm going to dive in a little bit more details into each one of these next. So we'll start with the SRF Helene funding. The SRF Helene funding is the supplemental appropriations that happened by Congress in December that goes through Environmental Protection Agency for the state revolving funds. We have in North Carolina $685 million coming in from the federal government to supplement the SRF programs to address Hurricane Helene. You can see on the screen here that we have allotments for the drinking water state revolving funds. So we call that drinking water SRF Helene. We also have the clean water SRF allotment as well. So we have wastewater and drinking water funding. Those are the big dollar ones on the left. And then we also have a third program, which is new to us, which is a funding for decentralized wastewater treatment systems. So think in terms of septic systems or cluster systems. These are not centralized wastewater, but they're decentralized, and there's funding specifically to address adding flood resiliency to those to decentralized systems as well. I'll talk about all three of them as we go through this presentation. The drinking water SRF and clean water SRF we're administering under our regular programs, but we're taking rolling applications, and there are specific eligibility requirements for this funding. On the decentralized funds, against the new programs, we've developed some of the plans, but as we fund those projects, we'll be working with the applicants to make sure that we meet all the federal and state requirements and provide funding assistance as best we can. The purpose of the funds is to improve flood resilience. Yes, you can use these funds to repair damages that you've had because of Hurricane Helene, but they need to include flood resiliency. So you're not just replacing like for like, you're adding in resilience to your infrastructure. That's the primary purpose of the SRF Helene funds, is the flood resilience. So when you're providing your applications, make sure you're including the resilience portion and you're explaining in your application very clearly what exactly you're doing to improve flood resilience to your infrastructure. On the decentralized side, the funds are to be used for improving flood resilience of decentralized systems, or potentially to connect homes, or to assess the option to connect homes to a centralized system and take them off of decentralized. I've got more information about that in a few slides. Back in May, before we even had the funding program and we had the application forms, we went out west, we talked to a lot of local governments, we talked to a lot of potential applicants. We were there, the COGS as well. We asked potential applicants to submit to us their wish lists, their potential projects. What projects do you think you may be using to apply for the SRF Helene funds down the line? That way we can start seeing what kinds of demands, what kinds of projects might be coming in, and also for us to understand what it would look like once we have application forms. This slide shows you that we got through this, we call it pre-applications, but we didn't require pre-application to actually apply for the SRF Helene. We greatly appreciate everybody who submitted a pre-application because we got a lot of information from that. We got 60 different entities. Usually it's local governments, but there are other types of utilities and other potential applicants, 60 different potential applicants submitting information that showed a demand of about $1.6 billion. We only have 685 million coming in from EPA. So right off the bat, we know that we have the demands are much higher than the funding availability. So these are going to be competitive. If everybody's going to be applying for the funds, it's going to be competitive. And you can see that the biggest gap is really on the wastewater side. We only have 254 million on the wastewater side, but the demand from the pre-application is 933 million. This doesn't even include some of the larger systems, like the city of Asheville. They didn't include the pre-application. So if you add those on top of everything that was submitted, you see that have even a bigger gap. All right, eligible applicants for the SRF Helene are the normal eligible applicants for SRF program in general, which are local government units, nonprofit water, wastewater utilities, and then the investor-owned drinking water utilities are eligible for the drinking water SRF Helene funds. The applicant must have been impacted by Hurricane Helene. So in the application, make sure that you're documenting how you were impacted. What was the impact of Hurricane Helene to your system, so that we can see that you're eligible for these funds. On the decentralized side, the eligible applicants are local governments, nonprofit utilities, and also CDFIs and nonprofit organizations that finance homeowners for decentralized wastewater treatment repairs. So that's new, and it was a state legislative change that happened recently to enable CDFIs and nonprofits to also apply for the Helene decentralized funds. The funding needs to go to areas that were affected by Hurricane Helene. So it doesn't have to be that the specific decentralized system itself was impacted by Hurricane Helene, but it needs to be in a Hurricane Helene impacted or affected area. And we're saying any of the counties that were one of the declared counties automatically qualifies as a Helene affected area. So as long as the decentralized systems are in one of those counties, in one of those areas, then it's eligible, then the applicant's eligible to provide funding assistance to address those needs. For all of our funding, applicants are always welcome to contract with other organizations to help. So we see that a lot with consulting firms, contractors, of course, but even with the decentralized funds, if the applicants want to contract with other organizations that would do a lot of the homeowner interactions, for instance, that's perfectly fine. The types of eligible projects for SRF Helene. Again, think in terms of flood resilience. That's what you need to show in your application. So projects that would prevent interruption of operations, projects that would prevent floodwaters from entering treatment works, and so forth. Those are all good types of projects to show that that would make you eligible or make the project eligible for the SRF Helene funds. Regionalization is also another option too. Interconnections, for instance, between systems. It helps provide additional water supply or additional water source in need when you need them during flood events, for instance. On the decentralized side, the projects that are eligible are projects that would protect the decentralized systems from rising waters or from power risks, or to reduce the risk of failure. Keep in mind, sometimes flood includes or provides result in landslides. Those landslides could just wash away decentralized systems. If there are projects to help prevent that and protect the decentralized systems, that's eligible. If systems are completely washed out and you need to put in a new system because now the homeowner is just straight piping, that is also eligible. Projects that will help with planning to assess the option to connect to a sewer system or to actually do the connection to the sewer system would also be eligible. However, we are reserving half of these funds for projects that would directly address decentralized systems themselves. So in a lot of communities out there, there are a lot of failing systems in the Helene affected areas. Well, you can replace those failing systems as long as you're replacing them with infrastructure that would be more resilient. And if you're just doing decentralized to decentralized, that's fine. That works well. If you're planning to connect them to a sewer, that's also an option. But again, we're reserving about 11 million, about half of the funds for the decentralized only without the sewer connections. The sewer connections can also be from any of our other funding programs. We often fund projects that would extend and connect homes to drinking water or to wastewater systems, and that's eligible for other funding programs. I'll pause here because I am seeing some chat, but unfortunately I don't actually see the chat myself in here. So I'm going to ask If any of our staff members can just read out any questions that you think I need to address right now. So Jen, do you see anything that you think I need to address?
I do. Are COGS not eligible?
Oh, Jen, your volume is really low.
Sorry. Hold on. Start up my microphone. Wow, it is low. I apologize. It's not letting me. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay. The question is, are COGS not eligible to apply for the decentralized wastewater project for their region? And what about regional health departments?
Okay, you dropped off again, but I heard are COGS eligible to apply for decentralized funds?
Yes.
Is that the question?
What about regional health departments?
Okay, no. So the state, the legislative change that allowed CDFIs and nonprofits did not include COGS, so COGS can't directly apply for the funds. Now, if a COG has a nonprofit organization that is currently financing homeowner repairs to decentralized systems, that nonprofit organization can apply. But the COG itself is not an eligible applicant, and neither is a regional health department. But you could also be partners with ineligible applicants. So you could partner up with another organization, a nonprofit, for instance, or a CDFI that could apply, and you could be part of that team. And that will be okay as long as the CDFI or the nonprofit applies, but we can't directly award funding to regional health departments or the COGs for the decentralized funds. Any other questions, Jen, that I need to address?
Nope, those are the only two.
Thank you.
One, excuse me.
Okay, loan terms. So the SRF Helene is a loan program. It's a low interest loan program. We have made all these loans zero interest loans, and they're typically 20-year loan periods. All of the loans going for the drinking water and the clean water SRF will have a component that's going to be what we call principal forgiveness. We'll loan the funds, and a portion of the funds will be forgiven right away. So it looks like a grant to you. In the amount of the principal forgiveness really varies depending, and I have a slide later on that will show it varies based on the affordability and the economic constraints of the applicant and the system size. So the more constrained the system is, the more difficult managing a zero interest loan might be for potential applicants, the more principal forgiveness they'll be awarded. But everybody starts off with at least 30%. So even those that have the least constraints, they will have a 30% principal forgiveness and a 70% loan. On the decentralized side, 100% of these funds are principal forgiveness. So it's a forgivable loan right away. There is no loan repayment on the decentralized side. This is a busy slide, but it's showing you that for the principal forgiveness, there's 4 different levels. It was 3, but with public comment that we received, people asking for additional things, we added a 4th tier. So there's 4 different groupings of principal forgiveness, starting with those local government units that are designated as distressed, or the applicants are small systems, starting up to 20,000 connections, and 2 out of 5 socioeconomic indicators of the applicants are worse than state benchmark. That would qualify the system to have the first 5 million as principal forgiveness, and then the rest as 75% principal forgiveness and 25% loan at zero interest. There's another tier that is, if you raise that 20,000 threshold to 40,000 threshold, but you keep the 2 out of 5 indicators as worse than state benchmark, that applicant would qualify for 50% principal forgiveness and 50% loan. And then the third tier is if you're a small system, but you don't have those socioeconomic constraints. So you're serving up to 20,000 people, about 8,000 connections, but you don't have 2 out of 5 LGU indicators worse than state benchmark. You get the first 5 million, that's 100% principal forgiveness, and then you have 30% PF and 70% loan. And then last, if you're a large system that doesn't have 2 out of 5 LGU indicators, then you qualify for 30% principal forgiveness and 70% loan. Oh, and to know what this looks like, when we put this together, I think we estimated that about 80% of the local governments that may apply for these funds would qualify for that first tier. So it's the vast majority of the systems would probably qualify for first 5 million principal forgiveness, 75% principal forgiveness, and 25% loan at 0%. I think I saw in the chat or a question about the slides being posted. The slides will be posted, and they're actually in the web somewhere in WebEx. If you can find the contents option, you'll be able to download the slides today. Okay, SRF Helene applications are taken on a rolling basis. I mentioned again that we're taking them every day, and then we look at application received by a specific cutoff date to present it to SWIA at the next SWIA meeting. We've already gone through the first of 4. So the first time was August 1st was the cutoff date. Yesterday, September 17th, SWIA made those awards. So SWIA awarded 14 projects, or I think it was 10 different applicants for about $86 million for drinking water and wastewater. No decentralized funds. We haven't received any applications with decentralized yet. We're taking applications right now, all the way through November 3rd. All applications received by November 3rd at 5 o'clock will be considered at the SWIA meeting on December 10th. Applications we get after 5 o'clock on November 3rd, all the way to January 9th at 5 o'clock, will be considered in February. And the applications received between January 10th and March 2nd will be considered in April. Again, March 2nd being potentially the final cutoff date for applications for the SRF Helenes. Applications get scored according to the priority rating system that SWIA has established, which is part of the application process. So when you do the applications, it will guide you to go through the rating systems, and you'll see what's being prioritized. And you just show how your application meets those priority points. On the drinking water and wastewater sides, I'll talk about decentralized in a second, but drinking water and wastewater, a couple of things to keep in mind for the programmatic specifics. I mentioned that there's an initial funding cap. So in order to give enough applicants enough time to apply by March 2nd, we're initially capping applications to $5 million per applicant for wastewater projects and $10 million per applicant for drinking water until April. After April's round of reviewing new applications, any remaining SRF funds will then be awarded to applications we received between July all the way through March 2nd, based on priority points, based on availability. So there's a potential for some who get partially funded to get additional funds in April, but we don't know what that looks like until we get all the applications. In the meantime, if you get awarded partial funding, then you can start working on the project, maybe phase it down or identify a portion of the project that you can do with the initial 5 or 10 million, and then see what happens in April. And we will work with other funding agencies as well to try to maximize other funding opportunities outside of the SRF Helene. Keep in mind that state revolving funds have a $200 million debt capacity or debt limit to each of the programs of clean water and drinking water. So if you already have drinking water SRF loans with us and you're close to 200 million, any new funding awards get counted towards that 200 million. We don't award more than $200 million of drinking water SRF or clean water SRF to any single applicant, but you can always pay off some of those old, existing loans in order to free up some more debt capacity. We are reserving about a third, 30% of the drinking water and SRF funds for small systems specifically until April. So between now and April, we're trying to make sure that at least 30% of the funds will be going towards systems that are serving up to 10,000 people. In April, once we do those 4 rounds of funding and we're considering what's remaining, that reserve goes away, and the remaining funds will then be applied to all of the applicants, regardless of system size. On the decentralized side, 50%, about 11 million, is being reserved for decentralized only projects. So working on decentralized systems, but not to do the extensions and connections to sewer systems. So there's about half of the money available right now for sewer connections, half the money right now available for decentralized only. And then in April, whatever funding is remaining, there won't be a reserve. It will just be available to the higher scoring applications. SRF loans have a 2% fee. for the SRF Helene funds, the fee can be financed out of your awards. So when you submit your applications, you can include the 2% fee as part of your budget, and it gets part of the awards, and you'll use your principal forgiveness funding to pay that 2% fee. So that is an option. If you want to pay the 2% fee from other sources, that's perfectly fine. If you want to use the SRF awards to pay the fee, that's fine. It doesn't add additional, it's going to be part of the award itself. SRF funds are federal funds, so federal cross-cutters will apply. That means things like you'll have to do engineering reports, you have to do your ER, EID, you'll have to abide by Davis-Bacon wages, American Iron and Steel will apply. SRF Helene, because there are disaster funds, Build America, Buy America does not apply to the project unless you're matching these funds with some, or you're adding in some other federal funds to this project where BABA does apply, then it will apply for these funds. But if it's just purely SRF Helene funds, Build America, Buy America does not apply. For drinking water and wastewater, in a normal SRF process, we would award the funds, you go through the engineering phase and design phase, and then when you go out and you go out to bid and you execute construction contracts, then that's when you can start requesting disbursements from the funds, because you have to get LTC loan approval. And we disperse funds to you at that point, and you can start paying your engineers and your consultants for the costs incurred. For the SRF Helene, because everybody's starting off with principal forgiveness, we're allowing up to 15% of your funding award to be dispersed before you do your construction contract executions. So we're able to help you pay for and cover those engineering costs as you go along, up to 50% of the awards. There are some things that you'll have to submit beforehand, which includes things like the governing board resolution, accepting the funding offer with all the conditions and so forth. We will not disperse any loans, any actual loan dollars, until the local government commission approves your loan terms. These are 0% loans, 20 years, and for most of the systems, there'll be a small dollar amount. That's a loan portion. So hopefully that will go well. But if you don't have your audits in place, this is an incentive to get those audits done. And then we have to make sure that we're not duplicating funding from other sources. So FEMA, Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, if you're working with other agencies to try to get funding, we just have to make sure that our funds are not being used to pay for the exact same thing that the other agencies are paying for. So if you are being funded by FEMA or other organizations, we will want to make sure that all parties are together to make sure that we are delineating who's paying for what without any overlap. On the decentralized side, some of the programmatic things to keep in mind is we do have to expend these funds in an expeditious, timely manner, but decentralized is kind of a different thing. You're going out to communities, you're trying to talk to homeowners, you're finding out sometimes one neighbor wants to have the work done on their system, the next neighbor doesn't, or 2 weeks later, they change their minds. And it's going to be it's challenging to just put you on a specific schedule. But we're going to try to manage as best we can and fund as much work as possible as we go along with the projects. We do have to spend the funds within a certain time period. So within 5 years, the funds need to be expended, or by December 2031, whichever comes first. That's because the federal grants themselves that we are receiving have to be spent within a certain time period. Otherwise, unused funds go back to the federal governments. All the funds for the decentralized also have the same SRF conditions that I talked about in a slide, 1 or 2 slides ago. Davis-Bacon, American Iron and Steel, but no BABA. Okay, I'll pause here, see if there are any other questions before I talk about application packages. And anything I need to address?
Nope, you're good.
All right, moving on. Application packages. So on our website, again, the PowerPoint slides are available. You can click on these links. The applications webpage has the rolling application for funding. That's what you should use for the SRF Helene funds. Look for the one that's called rolling application. You fill that out. Make sure you check the SRF Helene box. There are additional forms you have to submit. So look for the relevant SAHMW, SAM, Priority Rating System Guidance Form. That's the document that shows you the rating system that applies to the SRF Helene. And it has a form that you fill out and you show, and you provide a narrative that shows how you're claiming each of the line items that's in this priority system. That's how we identify, that's how we score the projects. We look at your application, we look at your narrative, we look at your supporting documentation that's needed. Make sure you read the guidance document thoroughly and provide all the documentation that's being asked for. So we check that documentation and we see whether or not you've provided enough documentation to show that you successfully are claiming a specific line item from that priority rating system. And then we tally up your score, and we present to SWIA in priority order based on the scores. And then SWIA normally would award funds that are higher scoring all the way down until we run out of funds. We'll need a resolution from the governing boards with the application. So when you're submitting the application, we need the governing boards to have passed a resolution supporting the application, basically telling us that the governing board knows and supports this application being submitted. So we're not getting applications submitted without the governing board's permission. So we need that governing board resolution. That could be the thing that takes the longest time because you have to schedule for that to make sure it gets done. There's the affordability calculator for the SRF Helene is actually called the SRF Helene Principal Forgiveness Estimator. So I showed you that slide. I have 4 different tiers of principal forgiveness. This is an actual Excel file that you can use to put in some information, and it will estimate what is the principal forgiveness that you would qualify for. We ask that you provide that to us, and then we will recalculate here when we get the applications as well. But that's one way for you to know what you might qualify for. If you don't know, am I going to get 75-25? Am I going to get 50 or 50-50? This is one way where you can do a self-assessment and it helps you understand what potentially you might get. There are a couple of other forms as well that you would need to submit, and they're listed here. The rating systems are on the website, like I said, and the drinking water, the wastewater rating systems are identical. And also the decentralized rating system is on there. That one is definitely different. The rating system for decentralized is, I think it's only 4 line items. So you would just claim one of those 4 line items and provide a supporting documentation for that. On the decentralized, one thing I will point out is, the first 2 line items is asking for things like show that at least half of the decentralized systems that you're going to work on were damaged or were failing. And we recognize that you might not know that at the time of application because you want to go out to the communities and start talking to homeowners and identify which systems have been damaged and which systems are failing. So we're okay with that as part of the application. If you're claiming that by the end of the project, at least half of the decentralized systems that the money will have gone towards fixing were either damaged or failing, in the application, you would specify that. You would specify that you will have a program that will go out and identify which homeowners, which systems were damaged or failing, and that you will verify and document that you've met at least that 50% threshold by the time you complete the project. And the application needs to be very, very clear on what the program looks like. So that's all in the guidance document, but it's a different, keep talking, decentralized is different than drinking water, wastewater, and that's just something to keep in mind. When you complete your applications and collect all the application forms and all the narratives and the governing board resolution, all that, and you're ready to submit, there's a form, a Laserfish form that you go on, fill in a few of the questions, and then submit all the attachments, including the application itself, to us directly. So please use that Laserfish form, and you'll see again in the application materials itself, it provides you that link. Right. Any questions on SRF Helene? And if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask a question, you're welcome to do that too.
Patty, before we get started on that, we have a question about for decentralized wastewater treatment systems, has the resolution entity for a nonprofit applicant been clarified?
The question is whether or not there needs to be a resolution for decentralized if the applicant is not a local government, is a nonprofit or CDFI or another organization that doesn't have a governing board. Is that the question?
Has the resolution entity, and this is not my area for decentralized, so I don't know the answer to that. Has a resolution entity for a nonprofit applicant been clarified? Like, don't most nonprofits have a board? They should.
And that's if there is a governing board, we would want that governing board's resolution. If it's an organization that doesn't have such a thing, I'm going to say something, but I want my staff to step in and let me know, because we've had precedent on that a little bit with private utilities, for instance. We would want basically the executive, whoever's in charge of the organization, to provide that letter, provide something to show that they're aware of the application, they support this application. If there are questions about that specifically, you can also reach out to our staff, and then we could figure it out. We can figure out who is the responsible person to provide that kind of a letter or a resolution or something that shows that the decision makers, the ultimate decision makers for the organization, is aware of the application. That's what we're looking. What we're looking for.
Yeah.
Shadi, this is
And-
Kavita.
Kavita, go ahead.
Yes, you are right. So if you have a board, I think we would like to have like, a board's resolution or something in kind of in writing saying they're aware of this application and they support the project. So that's all we are looking for. So if you have like a specific question on a specific entity, please reach out to us and see what we can do. So, of course, like we will work with you on who is your governing authority if you don't have a board.
Thank you, Kavita.
And we have one more question, and I can tackle this one, Shadi. Principal forgiveness estimator Excel sheet is built out only for 4 LGUs. If your system serves more than 4, should we use the 4 largest communities you serve or modify the worksheet? The answer to that is it's not common that we have that, but for our other programs, we've actually told the applicant, send us your data, we'll expand the columns for you. That doesn't mean that we don't want everyone sending your stuff if it's less than 4. It's just if we have to add more columns, I believe the worksheet is locked, then we have to be able to unlock it on our side and add more columns for you. So Devin, if you have a question about that, reach out to me and I'll get you to the right person.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And that really only applies for the drinking water and clean water applications. Again, with the decentralized, it's 100% fiscal forgiveness. So I don't think you even, Jen, correct me, they don't even need to submit that one for the decentralized funds.
I don't think so. It's not needed. It's all PF.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, I'm going to switch gears and talk about grant program real quick. So again, the fall 2025 funding rounds includes applications that we consider for all of our funding programs, not the SRF Helene. That's only done through the rolling applications. Now we're talking about all of our other funding programs that we normally would award during the fall. We have CDBG-EI grants, we have SRF loans, we have the State Reserve program, which has grants and loans this time, and Viable Utilities Reserve grants. So if you're planning to apply for the fall 2025, you can, and Session Law 2025-26 requires SWIA to prioritize the state grants. So that's coming from the State Reserve Program grants in this fiscal year for Helene repairs. So applications that we receive in the fall rounds that are eligible for, eligible for state grants and they're eligible for the type of projects that are prioritized can get prioritized for grant funding. For the fall 25 round, we have about $30 million of state grants available. So the eligible applicants that we receive, we'll look and see what applications we receive, and all those that potentially qualify for this SRP grant prioritization will get prioritized by SWIA first. And if we have any more SRP grants, if the 30 million is not all used up for Helene repairs, then it'll be used for other types of grants that we would have, that we would normally fund with the SRP grants. So like asset inventory assessments or merger regionalization feasibility grants. The prioritization in the session law was pretty clear. There's specific things that have to, that makes a project eligible for this funding or this prioritization, sorry. First, it has to be for a local government nonprofit utility in one of these 16 counties. And you'll have the slides so you can take a look and see if you're in the county or not. The project has to repair, replace, or construct equipment, buildings, or natural features due to damage or effects from Hurricane Helene, including capacity building. So again, we need to see in the application that what you're planning to fix in this project is because of Helene damages. So we need that documentation to show that there was Helene damage and that you're trying to repair it. And it can only be for the amount needed. That's for unmet needs above anything that's paid by insurance and available federal aid. And we've gotten questions. Well, if we're still working with the federal government, we're still expecting federal aid, but we haven't gotten it yet. We don't know exactly how much we're going to get. How do we, what does this mean? The answer is if you haven't gotten it yet, it's still an unmet need. So it's okay for you to apply, even though you're still trying to get FEMA or other federal assistance. It's okay for you to apply and only include the portions that you have not yet gotten guarantees that you're going to get funding for it. And then if you eventually get federal funding, then we'll just have to make sure, again, there's no duplication. And if federal funding is coming in, we would adjust what the funding award is to you. So you're not getting both funding systems. And then all other general statute 159G eligibilities, all the statutory requirements the SRP grants apply, which includes that $3 million cap for applicants that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. So we can only award up to $3 million every 3 years per applicant for drinking water and up to $3 million per applicant for wastewater projects every 3 years. To apply, make sure that you do the fall application and include this additional form. So this is the form that we use to even check to see if you're eligible for this SRP eligibility. If you don't include a form, we can't consider you for this eligibility. So it's a certification form. It's called the State Reserve Program Eligibility Form for Hurricane Helene Prioritization per Session Law 2025-26 on our website alongside with the application forms. Fall 25 applications are due 5 p.m. September 30th. Laserfish is actually going to cut off at 5:01. So if you try to submit at 5:02 and you don't see this link working, it's because the application window has closed. SWIA will award these funds in February. Fall applications, we're doing it the same way we've always done it. It's one application, and we'll consider you, we'll score you, and we'll rank your projects, and we'll provide the best available funding based on eligibility, based on priority points, based on availability of funding. So you submit your application, and you'll be considered for everything that you qualify for, not just the SRP grants. So you might have a $10 million project. If it's the highest scoring project, you might get $3 million of SRP grants and $7 million of SRF or SRP loan or SRF loan, something of that nature. Applicants are eligible to receive funding from multiple sources. So you can get both the SRP grants and you can also apply for the SRF Helene funds and get the SRF Helene funds as well. It's okay to have a project that has multiple funding sources. That's our recommendation is you apply for the SRF Helene as well as the SRP grants and other funding sources. So make sure you submit both of the applications. If SWIA has already awarded funding, SWIA will only award any additional funding needed for the projects at the next meeting. So SWIA won't swap money. It won't swap older awards with newer awards. If you get SRF Helene funds first, and it's fully funded, then you won't be eligible for any more funding. If you guys get SRF Helene funds first, but it's only partially funded, then in the fall round, you may be considered for the additional funds that were not already funded by the SRF Helene. You always have the option to decline a funding offer that's been provided to you before the application deadline, and then we would consider you as unfunded, and then the full amount will be considered for the funding going forward. Jen, you raise your hand.
Yes, I want to clarify related to CDBGI applications. There are additional requirements you have to meet. So if you're planning on applying for that funding, please do be aware of that as you're applying. And we do have a couple of questions.
Okay, before the question, so that's a good point to bring up. CDBGI has additional requirements. So does the Viable Utility Reserve. There's another form there. When you do the application, you'll see that there are specific forms and additional forms that you need to submit for specific programs. It's the same application, but there are some specific requirements and specific forms if you're gearing towards or you're looking for something, one of our particular programs, including the SRP grants. That form that I just mentioned is one of those examples as well. Thanks for bringing that up, Jen. What questions should we answer right now?
So we have three. I'm getting requests that speak more to resilience in general operations if flood knocks out localized infrastructure like water line breaks, draining tanks, not specific to floodwaters destroying infrastructure like floodwater damage to raw intakes. Can you clarify the intent? Help clarify the intent.
Only half heard your question, but I see it now in the chat. I was able to pull it up. More resilience in general operations if flood knocks out localized infrastructure, not specifically floodwater destroying infrastructure. Yes. So again, if your project is going to do something to your infrastructure to make it resilient in such a way that you can continue your operations during flooding. Doesn't have to be flood damages. It could just be flood impacts, like loss of power, for instance. If you're doing a project that's going to provide resilience against that, it's eligible for the SRF Helene. Kavitha, can you add a little bit more to that, please?
That is correct, Shadi. The intent is to make sure if there is an event, a similar event happens in the future, we have some resiliency in place where you can operate even if that infrastructure is flooded or it's not accessible. So even if you are building some accessible pathways to a pump station or lifting up your pump, lifting up your electricals, all those things are eligible or counted as resiliency. So I'm not sure exactly I understood the question. If this is not what you're intending to ask, please unmute and ask the question.
Yeah, raise your hand maybe so we can see that you have a follow-up. I'm seeing the other two questions in the chat. Yes, installing generators is eligible. And also scoring ranges right now, it's hard to tell because we've only had one funding rounds so far with the SRF Helene. And practically they funded, we had 16 applications, 15 of which were eligible, and they funded all 14 that could actually get funding. The 15th had they passed the limit, the cap already. So they funded practically everybody. So it's, we don't really have a scoring range right now to be able to talk about. I see Ken that you raised your hand. Go ahead, Ken. I don't know if I need to unmute you, if you can unmute yourself.
All right, finally, I had to click unmute like 12 times. So what I'm getting a lot of conversations about with different entities across the region is, hey, this will add a little bit of resilience, and it's more like, well, in case we have a big water line break here, we could use another tank in this area, or if we have or if just a strictly a capacity issue that they're getting close to the 80-20 rule. And so it would really help out if they could expand their water plant. And the system wasn't impacted, but it was, but it was not direct damage as it relates to Helene. And so it's that fine line between, yes, it'll absolutely be more resilient in operations. But to what extreme do we have to kind of justify the term resilience?
There is the guidance does not specify what extent. So I have been with the recent applications, we have already seen some valves, even putting regular interval valves, saying okay, in case there is a water line break, there is valves to shut off to reduce the extent of water problems in the future. So even that was considered as a resiliency. So all those things that you were talking about, as long as you can justify some resiliency into the proposed project, that is good, and it is eligible. Regarding the eligibility and the priority points, I think there is a one line item in the priority point system, I think 2E or something, that gives points directly if you're addressing damaged infrastructure. So that is the only place we prioritize that, one project is addressing the damaged infrastructure versus you are doing a general resiliency project on an impacted system. So that's the difference. So it is eligible, but then if you are actually more than 50% of your proposed project has been impacted or damaged and you're doing that project to address that damage, then you're a little bit, highly prioritized, meaning extra points. So that's the only way the current system differentiates between, the extent of damage. Did it answer your question?
Yeah, he put in the chat that, thanks for clarifying. So we'll take that. Thank you, Ken. I know there are a couple other questions in the chat, but I'm gonna try to wrap up the slides and then come back to additional questions. Just make sure that we're providing all the information in the slide deck. Application package for the SRF. Now we're talking again back to fall 2025 funding. Application package looks similar to the SRF Helene package, but make sure that you use the fall 2025 application form. Make sure you're adding in that state reserve program eligibility form that I talked about earlier. The priority points, the guidance documents, look for the one that's called PRS Guidance and Form, Drinking Water, Wastewater Construction Projects, to provide the narrative and the supporting documentation. We'll need the resolution, we'll need the other forms, and then the fall 2025 affordability calculator is the equivalent to the principal forgiveness estimator from the SRF Helene. And then there's a different Laserfiche form for the fall 2025 funding rounds. So when you do the fall 25 application, make sure you submit it to the Laserfiche form that says fall 2025 funding application. And again, you'll find that link in the application form itself. And then the general information, we have a webpage that has all the application materials on there. It also includes a recording of the application training that was done early August. I think it was August 2nd. I can't remember the exact date, but it was early August. We recorded the training. It's posted. It includes the application training slides. So we'll post this slide deck on there too, but you'll find a lot more details in the application training slide deck because it went into each of the priority rating systems and some of the key points and things to consider when you're applying for funding. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Fall 25 applications due September 30th. Rolling applications, we accept them anytime. Next cutoff date is November 3rd. Last one is March 2nd. And then there are organizations out there that can help provide direct assistance to potential applicants. If you're already working with a consulting firm, fantastic. There are, of course, also COGS, Council of Governments. There are other organizations like the Environmental Finance Center at the UNC School of Government, the Association of County Commissioners, the Municipalities, Rural Water Association, SRCAP. There are organizations that can provide assistance in helping prepare your applications. They can't submit them for you, but they can, but after the applicant actually signs off on the application materials. So they can help in some situations actually prepare the application forms, ask you to sign some things, get the governing board resolution and submit them for you, or even just help work with you on the application materials. We've also got our own staff that can help you kind of think through questions, think through projects. So we've got staff here who are out west right now talking to folks like Bob and Tim and Justin. And if you need someone to talk to from our division about potential projects, reach out to those folks. And if Bob, Tim, or Justin, if you want to drop your contact information in the chat, that would be great. If not, you can find it on our website as well. Or there's another option, which is EPA. EPA has technical assistance providers available, and they have a portal, and you can just go on the portal on that link that you see on the screen to request assistance. And EPA will connect you with one of the technical assistance providers. Sometimes it's the same group that you see listed here, and sometimes it could be something else, because there are some national technical assistance providers that may be also available, and EPA can provide that connection with the national TAs as well. Actually, before we move on, Bob, Justin, Tim, anything you want to add to what I just said about this? Oh, and I don't know if you can unmute either. All right, if there is something else that you want to convey, please put it in the chat. We can pass on the message. All right, I wonder if that is. All right, so there's no time to go over the takeaways again, but they're in the slide deck. I think we covered those points in the takeaways and during the presentation, but you'll have them again when you download these slides. And then I'm going to pause here, take any more questions. I know we're 3:01. If folks are dropping off, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. I'm going to stick around for a few more minutes to try to wrap up questions before we end the webinar.
Yep.
Shadi,
we have a couple of more questions in the chat.
Okay. Before we do that, Kavitha, did you have something you want to say?
no, that's the word exactly I was
Okay.
going to say. The question, the Kristen's question about 159G requirement for SRP prioritization. Shadi, I don't think we discussed this, but then, you know, in our normal process, we use the SRF affordability calculator to to find the eligibility for that, as you know, grant. So I'm not sure how that would affect the Helene prioritization. So can you read that question?
Yeah, I just pulled it up. What energy require that grants limited based on the affordability calculator? Advise the communities that should be prioritized on Julia.
So how it is worked right now
Oh.
is, yeah, we will only award people who has, you know, who can qualify for the affordability calculator.
Yeah, it's a good question, Kristen. I don't believe it's in 159G. I need to double check that. Don't have a direct answer for you right now. I do want to follow up with you on this one. My advice is, if just for everybody, is just submit the applications. Even if you think that the affordability calculator shows that you don't qualify for a grant, I think just go ahead and submit it if you have an eligible project. And then we need to take a look and follow up on that question. For folks that want the answer to this question as well, feel free to contact me. I'll show my contact information a little bit later on as well. But since September 30th is coming up, my advice is go ahead and submit, and then we'll try to figure out. But I think it's possible, but I'm not saying that until we take a look at it. It's a good question, Kristen.
Okay. And the next question Jessica has is, if Helene funds are available in April to give additional funds to previous partially funded Helene awardees, will these additional funds be given based on the priority scores? Yes, these will be awarded based on the priority scores. So if you have a project that already got funded and then you feel like that, you know, you can add more documentation to correct the ranking, or if you would like to add, you know, to give us more documentation to support your claim for additional priority points, probably we can take a look at those. Again, the other thing is it's also based on if some, you know, two projects score exactly the same, we would probably look at who submitted the application first. So it's going to be a challenge in, you know, when in April to decide who gets more funding, but definitely we will be going with the priority order and also the order of submittal. Shadi, is that how you are also thinking?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Thank you for covering that one. Let's see. Next, Tim had followed up. So Tim Baldwin. I mentioned Tim Baldwin, Bob Taylor, and Justin Nolan. They're the three that kind of go and help communities out west. They put in the chat that they just want to echo what I said, so that they're out there in the field. They're actually in Silva today, and happy to help with anything that's needed. So you can always contact them for additional advice or just work. I do have a question about 3A and 3B system. Is that something, Kavitha, that you can address?
Yeah, I think this is about that, the Helene, the flood risk management plan. So if you read read our guidance, there is, like, you know, few bullet points that we want things to be addressed, like how the plan should look like. Again, we in DWI do not have a template or an acceptable type of format. However, what we are doing is if you can come up with something based on that, or if you do not have something that meets all the criteria, you can agree to amend it or edit it and make it better. Even that is eligible to get points. So if you say we have a draft now, but we are going to make this cover broader, whatever, all the bullet points that needed, then as long as you commit to that and the budget shows that there is a budget line item that is dedicated to preparing such a plan, we should be good. I would really seek to the agencies who help with such plans within our DWI. I don't think our staff has expertise on advising you on how your flood management plan should look like. Shadi, you want to add anything on that? Because we discussed with a sister agency of ours on the main bullet points, so they provided us with the few line items that's we already included in our guidance. So other than that information, at this point, we do not have much more to give you.
Yeah, and it's one of the things where there are some experts out there that you could talk to. I don't know if this is something that Tim or Justin or Bob would have some experience that they can also provide some assistance as well. So you can also just reach out to them, see if they can provide some help with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give Tim a request to unmute just so that Tim, that way if you want to unmute and add anything, you're welcome to. Okay, and then looking at somebody asked a question. Tim, do you have anything you want to add?
This is Justin on Tim's computer. I was going to say, I do think that the guidance, I looked into the 3A and 3B and a time working with Burnsville. The guidance is really thorough in terms of what needs to be included. The lack of exemplar can be kind of hard, but I'm happy to assist where possible if there's somebody who's having particular trouble and actually attempting to put one together. I would love to help.
Thank you, Justin.
Again,
Sorry.
for application, completing the plan is not necessary.
Let's see, there's a question that was asked about installing generators that Logan responded to, and there was a follow-up question, but I think Logan has stepped out. So the question was whether or not installing generators for pumps on a water system can be considered. Logan said, if there are no generators here already, then yes, you can install new generators. The question is whether or not this is about SRP or SRF Helene. Definitely for SRF Helene. I don't know if Kavitha, this also applies to SRP. I mean, I think you can definitely do generators as SRP,
Yes,
right?
but for SRP, that priority rating system, there is a line item for resiliency redundancy. That is actually for the added resiliency. So Logan's response is like, yeah, if you already have a generator that is supporting your current equipment, and then you are, replacing that equipment with new generator, you will not get those points. So that is these resiliency redundancy points for SRP, SRF priority rating system for additional or added resiliency, not just replacing resiliency.
Thank you. And then there's a question about, can line item 3A and 3B be included as part of the application scope? Just saw that 3B mentions that it can be included in the project scope for points.
That is correct. 3B can be used. I'm not sure about 3A. I have to look at the guidance, but 3B, yes, if as long as you commit to making a plan and the budget includes that amount to prepare a plan, then you can claim those points. But again, once you get funded and you didn't get fully funded, but you have to reduce some scope on that, and then if you want to cut down this as a scope reduction, probably it will not work, because since you have you got points to make this plan and that is how you got funded, now you can't just cut that scope to meet your project funding needs. So that's something that you have to be careful. If you're reducing the scope, please make sure this one is not something that you are cutting out of your project.
Thank you, Kavitha. I don't see any other questions in the chat. If anybody still has a question, please, you can use the raise a hand function. And just ask your question. We'll unmute you and you can ask your question. Just give it another few seconds to see if anybody raises their hands, and if not, we can adjourn. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing anybody raising hands, so I think that's it for today. Again, oh, there's got one. Scott, let me unmute you, please. Give me a second. Go ahead. Please unmute yourself now.
Hey, thanks, Shelley. Quick question. If you touched on this earlier, if a project that was previously awarded but received minimal principal forgiveness, if that project or a variation of that project is now eligible for SRP Helene or SRF Helene, can we reapply with that project with the understanding that now there's more principal forgiveness available potentially, and that we may end up with better funding terms?
So if a project, let's say, got $10 million awarded by SWIA, and that might be, let's just call it all loan, $10 million of loan previously, and potentially it's a project that could qualify for this funding. If you're applying and your project cost now has gone from 10 million to 12 million, and you apply, SWIA will consider it and could award you $2 million more. And that 2 million will be split according to the principal forgiveness rules that we just talked about. If you wanted to replace the $10 million of loan, you'd have to basically decline the funding, close out that project before you apply for a $12 million project going forward. And then that $12 million, if we receive the declination of previous funding at the time of application, we can consider your application for all funding. But that's a really risky move because there's no guarantee that you're going to get funding down the line from SWIA. So our advice is always apply when you can for what you can get. And then if you get a funding award that you can pay, that you can afford, accept it and go with the project. It's very, very difficult it's a risky move to decline the funding because you're throwing your hat back in the ring and hoping that there'll be future funding that will replace, a funding award that you already received with different terms. I think I saw somebody raise their hand, but I'm not sure if that's it. Does that answer your question, Scott? Okay, he said yes, thanks in the chat. Thank you, Scott. All right, checking again to see if there are any more hands. I don't see one. Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for staying a little bit extra. Appreciate the questions, and yeah, we're looking forward to receiving your applications, both the fall 25 rounds as well as the SRF Helene. And the SRF Helene that's where we have more money right now. So please submit your applications. We'll review them as quickly as possible and get them in front of SWIA as quickly as possible as well. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all the staff who are on here as well helping.